These kinds of issues, such as conflicts with the government over issues like polygamy, abuse, and cult-like behavior, leads us to part 2, the Mormon Church now. LDS Church has faced numerous scandals, controversies, and issues in recent years. Many of these issues have come to light thanks to former members who have spoken about their horrific experiences. One of the most disturbing controversies involves allegations of sexual abuse within the church. Numerous reports have surfaced of church leaders covering up abuse and protecting perpetrators. For example, the Associated Press reported in 2022 about a significant case in Arizona where a bishop failed to report abuse, which then led to years of continued victimization for the now ex-member.
About not calling the police on Paul Adams?
Absolutely, because things could have gone better a lot earlier.
Who should be held accountable for this? Someone has to pay the price for the enormous damage done to these children.
Who doesn't want to protect just every kid that's there? And maybe if changes happen, maybe there won't be another one that suffers 5 more years because of this. So. Sorry.
This is the videotaped deposition of Lisa Adams by Zoom video conference, taken by the defendants in case number...
Did he tell you in that meeting with you and Bishop Herod that he had sexually molested your oldest daughter?
Yes.
Paul Adams was a U.S. Border Patrol employee. He was sexually abusing his daughter and taking videos of the abuse. The Adams had a second daughter, and Paul Adams began abusing his infant daughter.
Most churches have some form of confession, and in this case, Paul Adams confessed to his bishop that he was sexually acting out, and that included with his daughter, and that there may have been videotaping of the offenses with his daughter.
One would think that's enough to trigger an investigation, to call the authorities to comply with the mandatory reporting law. But instead, what the policy of this church is to call what's called a helpline. When the bishop calls the helpline, it's my understanding that it goes to an employee of the helpline. The employee then calls the Curtin McConkie law firm and says, hey, we have this abuse situation in Arizona, and the attorney then calls the bishop and tells him what to do, which in this case was, don't report it.
Hello, church operator.
Hi, I'm trying to reach the Mormon abuse hotline.
Are you a bishop?
No, I'm not. I was just hoping to talk to someone on the helpline and get some information.
So we don't have an abuse helpline for just general membership. It's just for bishops or stake presidents.
Since there's only one person that I talked to and no other witnesses or anything else, they said you absolutely can do nothing except for encourage him to turn it in. And I know that Bishop Mozzie, after me, confided with me. He said, we can't do anything, can we? I said, no, because not unless someone else reports it, then you can report that act.
The individual is told that because of the priest penitent privilege, if you disclose, if you report, then you could be sued, or the church could be sued for violating the priest penitent privilege. Now, that is bullshit.
Three of the Adams children are suing the Mormon Church and others associated with it for failing to report their sexual and physical abuse. They are also suing the Mormons for a church-wide conspiracy to cover up child sexual abuse.
Bishop Herod made it clear that Paul Adams should turn himself in,
or give him authority to report it to authorities. He wouldn't do that. To lay the blame at the feet of the bishops for it is just absurd. It's just absurd.
Was it your understanding as a member of the Bisbee ward that it was the bishop who would take care of reporting any crimes or any problems to the police, not the members?
Correct. The visiting teachers mentioned items that they saw and mentioned things that were said in the home. They told me that Brother Paul was doing inappropriate things with his children. At first, I thought it was spanking.
They just said, hey, let's excommunicate her father. It didn't stop. Let's have them go to therapy. It didn't stop. Hey, let's forgive and forget, and this will all go away. It didn't go away. They just let it keep happening.
So they take me to the therapist. They tell me you're gonna go in and you're gonna recant everything that you told your therapist. This happened around my 17th birthday. They send me into his office. I sit down and I don't tell him anything because I didn't know what to do. So I understood then that there was an element of therapist confidentiality there that I could potentially tell him what was going on. And I kind of did in kind of a roundabout fashion. And so after the session, I don't recant it because I thought, I was protected by confidentiality. So I walk back to our car, I get in, and the first thing that they say, they're like, did you recant your statement? Like, did you say that? Because they told me I needed to say I made it up, and I wasn't going to do
Wasn't that it was a dream or something?
Yeah, something along those lines, like either say that you imagined it, or you were crying for attention, or it was a dream, or I had to come up with some way that I made it up. And so
a man named David Bennett served prison time for. He was let out of his cage, joined the church, and was called to be the young men's president. There was about 6 or 7 of us boys, and he would have us over to his house on the weekends. One of the nights, I stayed. I don't even know that anything happened except I woke up with no clothes on. He had gotten mad at me the next morning, and he spanked me. He had a temper. He was just a dark individual. And I went straight to my dad when I got home. I said, Dave spanked me, Dad. But the abuse continued. We'd continue to go to his house. We'd continue to go on church campouts. One particular night, I couldn't move. I was drugged. I could speak. I just kept saying, stop, stop, please stop. You can't speak to animals like this. They belong in cages. And it wasn't what he did to me that was painful. It was that he made the other boys watch as he did it to me. This man was arrested, spent like a week in jail, and disappeared. We spent our childhood fearing that he was going to pop out of the bushes and take us. So that's the beginning of my Mormon story.
After this person had been arrested for child molestation, I immediately scheduled an interview or a meeting with the stake president. He basically explained that I was really disappointed in the way that he'd handled the situation. I did not go and ask whether or not the ex-bishop was called of God, because I already knew that the God I believed in would not put a child molester in those rooms with children. And put children at risk. I did not believe that. I did not ask that question because I didn't want the answer, or I didn't want to hear his answer, frankly. Enough people had come and talked to him concerned about the situation that he volunteered the answer anyways, which was also very horrifying. He said, and I was alone at this
because he would have called the original bishop.
He called this bishop, yes. And he told me that he wanted to testify that the Lord had called this bishop, and that sometimes the Lord works in mysterious ways.
Came into the room and started touching me in kind of the way, the joking way that he had been doing for months, which I had many times told him not to, and had even hit him a couple times and pushed him away from me. But this time he actually got on top of me.
Another major issue is the church's financial secrecy. In 2019, a whistleblower revealed that the church had amassed a $100 billion investment fund by collecting tithes from its members. This amount was supposed to be used ostensibly for charitable purposes, but much of it was not being used as intended. These raised questions about transparency and the church's true financial practices, both amongst its members and from others from the outside.
Explain how the tithe is supposed to be used.
It's swept into Ensign Peak accounts every week. And eventually the cash builds until it becomes a substantial amount. And then that tithing will get allocated to Ensign Peak's funds. Tithing from the church's perspective is to do the work of building the kingdom of God. But tithing is also used for saving. The church has made it clear a significant portion of their tithing is saved on a regular basis, probably around 20%. And that seems like a reasonable use of tithing to save for a rainy day.
They say that the money's tithed with no strings to it, that it's a matter of trust, and that you have to trust that it's going to be invested in the right way, and that's what we're here for.
Well, it's easy to manage if you don't have to be accountable, right? If you just say, trust us, and we won't tell you, then sure, it's easier to manage. You can move money around however you want. Anyone who asks a question isn't going to get an answer. I don't think that's healthy.
In my country, we say people's churches, the Protestants, the Catholics, they publish all their budgets openly to all the public.
Yeah.
Why it's impossible for your church?
Well, we simply think that that information belongs to those who made the contribution and not to the world. That's the only thing.
If that information belongs to those who made the contribution, then why did the church try to hide this information from us as tithe-paying members by forming 13 shell companies? Why were we, as tithe-paying members, never given access to a report of church finances? And why did detailed reporting of church finances stop after 1959? Let me know what you think.
Many former Mormons, who are often referred to as ex-Mormons, have shared their stories publicly as well. These thousands of stories have shed light on the reasons behind their departure. Websites like the ex-Mormons Reddit community, TikTok, and YouTube channels by ex-Mormons have provided large platforms for these voices. A very important resource for many leaving the church is the CES letter written by Jeremy Reynolds. This document outlines inconsistencies and troubling aspects of Mormon church history and doctrine that the Mormon church does not openly discuss or want to acknowledge. The letter has prompted many to question their LDS faith and eventually leave the church. Another example is John Dellin, who hosts the podcast Mormon Stories, where he interviews former members about their experiences.